Hi, friends. It's time for more We Free Men. First, please go wash your hands. I'll wait. Okay, clean hands. Yes? Excellent. Okay, we are now on chapter 3 entitled Hunt the Hag. Miss Tick removed her hat, reached inside, and pulled a piece of string. With little clicks and flapping noises, the hat took up the shape of a rather elderly straw hat. She picked up the paper flowers from the ground and stuck them on carefully. Then she said, "Whew, you can't just let the kid go like that," said the toad, who was sitting on the table. "Like what?" "She's clearly got first sight and second thoughts. That's a powerful combination." "She's a little know-it-all," said Miss Tick. "Right, just like you." "She impressed you, right? I know she did, because you were quite nasty to her, and you always do that to people who impress you." "Do you want to be turned into a frog?" "Well, now let me see," said the toad sarcastically. "Better skin, better legs, likelihood of being kissed by a princess 100% improved. Why, yes, whenever you're ready, madam." "There are worse things than being a toad," said Miss Tick darkly. "Try it sometime," said the toad. "Anyway, I rather liked her." "So did I," Miss Tick said briskly. "She hears about an old lady dying because these idiots thought she was a witch, and she decides to become a witch so they don't try that again. A monster roars up out of the river, and she bashes it with a frying pan. Have you ever heard the saying, 'The land finds its witch'? It's happened here, I'll bet. But a chalk witch? Witches like granite and basalt, hard rock, all the way down. Do you know what chalk is?" "I know you're going to tell me," said the toad. "It's the shells of billions and billions of tiny, helpless little sea creatures that died millions of years ago," said Miss Tick. "It's tiny, tiny bones, soft, soggy, damp. Even limestone is better than that. But she's grown up on the chalk, and she is hard and sharp, too. She's a born witch on chalk, which is impossible." "She bashed Jenny," said the toad. "The girl's got talent." "Maybe. But she needs more than that. Jenny isn't clever," said Miss Tick. "She's only a grade A prohibitory monster, and she was probably bewildered to find herself in a stream when her natural home is in stagnant water. There'll be much, much worse than her." "What do you mean, a grade 1 prohibitory monster?" asked the toad. "I've never heard her called that." "Well, I'm a teacher as well as a witch," said Miss Tick, adjusting her hat carefully. "Therefore, I make lists. I make assessments. I write things down in a neat, firm hand with a pen of 2 colors. Jenny is one of a number of creatures invented by adults to scare children away from dangerous places." She sighed. "If only people would think before they made up monsters." "You ought to stay and help her," said the toad. "I've got practically no power here," said Miss Tick. "I told you. It's the chalk. And remember the red-headed men? A Knack-McFeagle spoke to her, warned her. I have never seen one in my life. If she's got them on her side, who knows what she can do?" She picked up the toad. "Do you know what will be turning up?" she continued. "All the things locked away in those old stories. All those reasons why you shouldn't stray off the path, or open the forbidden door, or say the wrong word, or spill the salt. All the stories that gave children nightmares. All the monsters from under the biggest bed in the world. Somewhere, all stories are real, and dreams come true. And they'll come true here if they're not stopped. If it wasn't for the Knack-McFeagle, I'd be really worried. As it is, I'm going to try to get some help. That's going to take me at least 2 days without a broomstick." "It's unfair to leave her alone with them," said the toad. "Oh, she won't be alone," said Miss Tick. "She'll have you." "Oh," said the toad. Tiffany shared a bedroom with Fastidia and Hannah. She woke up when she heard them come to bed, and she lay in the dark until she heard their breathing settle down, and they started to dream of young sheep shearers with their shirts off. Outside, summer lightning flashed around the hills, and there was a rumble of thunder. Thunder and lightning. She knew them as dogs before she knew them as the light and sound of a storm. Granny always had her sheepdogs with her, indoors and out. One moment they would be black and white streaks across the distant turf, and then they were there, suddenly, panting, eyes never leaving Granny's face. Half the dogs on the hills were Lightning's puppies, trained by Granny Aching. Tiffany had gone with the family to the big sheepdog trials. Every shepherd on the chalk went to them, and the very best entered the arena to show how well they could work their dogs. The dogs would round up sheep, separate them, drive them into pens, or sometimes run off, or snap at one another, because even the best dog can have a bad day. But Granny never entered with Thunder and Lightning. She'd lean on the fence with the dogs lying in front of her, watching the show intently and puffing on her foul pipe. And Tiffany's father had said that after each shepherd had worked his dog, the judges would look nervously across at Granny Aching to see what she thought. In fact, all the shepherds watched her. Granny never ever entered the arena because she was the trials. If Granny thought you were a good shepherd, if she nodded at you when you walked out of the arena, if she puffed at her pipe and said, "That'll do," you walked like a giant for a day. You owned the chalk. When she was small and up on the wold with Granny, Thunder and Lightning would babysit Tiffany, lying attentively a few feet away as she played. And she'd been so proud when Granny had let her use them to round up a flock. She'd run about excitedly in all directions, shouting, "Come by," and "There," and "Walk up." And glory be, the dogs had worked perfectly. She now knew that they'd have worked out perfectly what she shouted. Granny was just sitting there smoking her pipe, and by now the dogs could read her mind. They only ever took orders from Granny Aching. The storm died down after a while, and there was a gentle sound of rain. At some point, Ratbag the cat pushed open the door and jumped onto the bed. He was big to start with, but Ratbag flowed. He was so fat that on any reasonably flat surface, he gradually spread out in a great puddle of fur. He hated Tiffany, but would never let personal feelings get in the way of a warm place to sleep. She must have slept because she woke up when she heard the voices. They seemed very close, but somehow very small. "Crivens, it's a very well saying find the hag, but what should we be looking for? Can you tell me that? All these big jobs look the same." "Not totally weed, Gordy. Down at the fishing, she said she was big girl." "A great help that is. I dinna think. They're all big girls." "You pair of dafties, everyone knows a hag wears a pointy hat." "So they canna be a hag if they're sleeping then?" "Hello?" whispered Tiffany. There was silence, embroidered with the breathing of her sisters, but in a way Tiffany couldn't describe. It was the silence of people trying hard not to make any noise. She leaned down and looked under the bed. There was nothing there but the gazunder. The little man in the river had talked just like that. She lay back in the moonlight, listening until her ears ached. Then she wondered what the school for witches would be like and why she hadn't seen it yet. She knew every inch of the country for 2 miles around. She liked the river best, and the backwater where the striped pike sunbathed just above the weeds, and the banks where the kingfishers nested. There was a heronry a mile or so upriver, and she liked to creep up on the birds when they came down here to fish in the reeds, because there's nothing funnier than a heron trying to get airborne in a hurry. She drifted off to sleep again, thinking about the land around the farm. She knew all of it. There were no secret places she didn't know about. But maybe there were magical doors. That's what she'd make if she had a magic school. There should be a secret doorway everywhere, even hundreds of miles away. Look at a special rock by, say, moonlight, and there would be another door. But the school, there would be lessons in broomstick riding and how to sharpen your hat to a point, and magical meals and lots of new friends. Is the bairn asleep? I canna hear her moving. Tiffany opened her eyes in the darkness. The voices under the bed had a slightly echoey edge. Thank goodness the gazunder was nice and clean. Right, let's get out to this wee pup then. The voices moved off across the room. Tiffany's ears tried to swivel to follow them. Hey, see here, it's a house. See, with wee cherries and things. They've found the dollhouse, Tiffany thought. It was a quite large one, made by Mr. Block, the farm carpenter, when Tiffany's oldest sister, who already had 2 babies of her own now, was a little girl. It wasn't the most fragile of items. Mr. Block did not go in for delicate work. But over the years, the girls had decorated it with bits of material and some rough and ready furniture. By the sound of its owners, the voices thought it was a palace. Hey, 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 we're in the cushy stuff now. There's a bed in this room with pillows. Keep it down. We don't want to wake any of them up. Crivens, I'm as quiet as a wee mouse. Ah, they're soldiers. What do you mean, soldiers? There's redcoats in the room. They've found the toy soldiers, thought Tiffany, trying not to breathe loudly. Strictly speaking, they had no place in the doll's house, but Wentworth wasn't old enough for them, so they got used as innocent bystanders back in those days when Tiffany had made tea parties for her dolls. Well, what passed for dolls. Such toys as there were in the farmhouse had to be tough to survive intact throughout the generations and didn't always manage it. Last time Tiffany had tried to arrange a party, the guests had been a rag doll with no head, 2 wooden soldiers, and 3/4 of a small teddy bear. Thuds and bangs came from the direction of the doll's house. I got one. Hey, pal, can your mammy sew? Stitch this. Oh, he's got a head on him like a tree. Crivens, there's a body here with no head at all. Aye, no wonder, 'cause here's a bear. Fill my boot, you wee washoon. It seemed to Tiffany that although the owners of the 3 voices were fighting things that couldn't possibly fight back, including a teddy bear with only 1 leg, the fight still wasn't going all one way. I got him! I got him! I got him! You're gonna get Alzheimer's, you wee heart disease. Someone bit my leg! Someone bit my leg! Come here! Ah, you're fighting yourselves, you idiots! I'm fed up with the Perrys. Tiffany felt Ratbag stir. He might be fat and lazy, but he was lightning fast when it came to leaping on small creatures. She couldn't let him get the whatever they were, however bad they sounded. She coughed loudly. See, said a voice from the doll's house. You woke them off. I'm off ski. Silence fell again, and this time, Tiffany decided after a while, it was the silence of no one there, rather than the silence of people being incredibly quiet. Ratbag went back to sleep, twitching occasionally as he disemboweled something in his fat cat dreams. Tiffany waited a little while, and then got out of bed and crept toward the bedroom door, avoiding the 2 squeaky floorboards. She went downstairs in the dark, found a chair by moonlight, fished the book of fairy tales off of Granny's shelf, and lifted the latch on the back door, and stepped out into the warm midsummer night. There was a lot of mist around, but a few stars were visible overhead, and there was a gibbous moon in the sky. Tiffany knew it was a gibbous moon because she'd read it in the almanac. That gibbous meant what the moon looked like when it was just a bit fatter than half full. So she made a point of paying attention to it around those times, just so she could say to herself, ah, I see the moon is very gibbous tonight. It's possible that this tells you more about Tiffany than she would want you to know. Against the rising moon, the downs were a black wall that filled half the sky. For a moment she looked for the light of Granny Aching's lantern. Granny Aching never lost a lamb. That was one of Tiffany's first memories, of being held by her mother at the window one frosty night in early spring, with a million brilliant stars glinting over the mountains, and on the darkness of the down, the one yellow star in the constellation of Granny Aching zigzagging through the night. She wouldn't go to bed while a lamb was lost, however bad the weather. There was only one place where it was possible for someone in a large family to be private, and that was in the privy. It was a 3-holer, and it was where everyone went if they wanted to be alone for a while. There was a candle in there, and last year's almanac hanging on a string. The printers knew their readership and printed the almanac on soft, thin paper. Tiffany lit the candle, made herself comfortable, and looked at the book of fairy tales. The moon gibbosed at her through the crescent-shaped hole cut in the door. She never really liked the book. It seemed to her that it tried to tell her what to do and what to think. Don't stray from the path, don't open that door, but hate the wicked witch because she's wicked. Oh, and believe the shoe size is a good way of choosing a wife. A lot of the stories were highly suspicious in her opinion. There was the one that ended when the 2 good children pushed the wicked witch into her own oven. Tiffany had worried about that after all that trouble with Mrs. Snapperly. Stories like this stopped people thinking properly, she was sure. She'd read that one and thought, excuse me, No one has an oven big enough to get a whole person in. And what made the children think they could walk around eating people's houses in any case? And why does some boy too stupid to know a cow is worth more than 5 beans have the right to murder a giant and steal all his gold? Not to mention, commit an act of ecological vandalism. And some girl who can't tell the difference between a wolf and her grandmother must either have been dense as teak or come from an extremely ugly family. The stories weren't real, but Mrs. Snapperly had died because of stories. She flicked past page after page, looking for the right picture, because although the stories made her angry, the pictures were the most beautiful things she'd ever seen. She turned a page, and there it was. Most of the pictures of fairies were not very impressive. Frankly, they looked like small girls' ballet class that had just run through a bramble patch. But this one was different. The colors were strange. There were no shadows. Giant grasses and daisies grew everywhere, so the fairies must have been quite small, but they looked big. They looked rather like strange humans. They certainly didn't look much like fairies. Hardly any of them had wings. They were odd shapes, in fact. In fact, some of them looked like monsters. The girls in the tutus wouldn't have stood much of a chance. And the odd thing was that, alone of all the fairy pictures in the book, this one looked as if it had been done by an artist who painted what was in front of him. The other pictures, the ballet girls and the romper suit babies, had a made-up, syrupy look. This one didn't. This one said the artist had been there, or at least in his head, Tiffany thought. She concentrated on the bottom left-hand corner, and there it was. She'd seen it before, but you had to know where to look. It was definitely a little red-haired man, naked except for a kilt and a skinny vest, scowling out of the picture. He looked very angry, and Tiffany moved the candle to see more clearly. He was definitely making a gesture with his hand. Even if you didn't know it was a rude one, it was easy to guess. And there I shall stop. And I will see you next time for the rest of chapter 3. Bye!